What are your first memories of the Japanese invasion of China?
Well, it was a horrible uh, remembrance, and that was so many years ago, and I was still at school, but it lasted so long, and it was so damaging. So most of the people experience that part of the history sometimes rather not to remember it.
Did the Japanese occupy where you lived?
No. The Japanese invaded China, and people who were free to leave most left and went to so-called free China, the part that not being bombed by the Japanese.
What were the conditions like for your family during that time?
Well, my family was separated in many, many parts. My parents in the United States, and my sisters went to States to study, and I myself studied in college, and then became a war correspondent.
How well aware were you and the Chinese people when events like Pearl Harbor or the Doolittle bombing happened?
I don't think we knew too much about it because you have to remember in those years that there's not that much reporting on that kind of events, and so we knew about it, and we had people experience of that part of the tragedy, but not too much were told.
So not a lot of open press, even in free China.
Well, free China at that time was going through a very difficult, very difficult time. And you had to remember those years, the press were not that free to cover all the news. So there were not that much being told. And only after the war, then what happened at that time was being told in many ways.
You mentioned that you became a war correspondent. How did that happen?
Well, I graduated from college and found a job. And I was very fortunate to be able to do the reporting of the war events, and not that people were that fortunate. And I enjoyed that experience and was glad to be able to tell what happened during that time.
What kind of events did you cover?
We covered the bombing in different places by the Japanese, and the fighting in China, and the refugees going to freedom everywhere. So it was a very difficult time, very difficult for the Chinese people, so as for the Chinese government. But that's the part of the history.
When did you first learn about the Flying Tigers?
Because the Flying Tiger went to China and stationed at different cities and looking for people to work for them. And my sister at that time just graduated from nursing school and was employed by one of the Flying Tigers outfit. And from my sisters, I learned a lot about that. And also myself, being employed by the news agency, also have the opportunity to find out more about the events at that period.
Did you meet General Chennault on assignment?
Yes, I met General Chennault at a press conference, and I was already being employed as a correspondent by the Central News Agency, and we went to different press conference. So I met General Chennault at a press conference many times.
And what were you most interested in learning from him?
At that time, I mean, looking back, I didn't think too much about it, but was interested in finding out what the Flying Tigers, I mean, General Chennault and his outfit were doing in China. And I have that assignment by my agency to write the stories. So fortunately, I was able to interview General Chennault and some of his men at that time, and was able to write a story which was well publicized, and I was glad to be able to tell the story to the people.
Was General Chennault happy to share what they were doing, or did he want to keep a lot of it secret at the time?
Well, he gave press conference almost like every month what accomplished the Flying Tiger accomplished. So I got to know some of the story, some of their activities, and was able to write about it and being published in the press.
How impressed were you? How impressed were the Chinese people with everything the Flying Tigers were doing?
Well, that was, at that time, there's no telling by me what the Chinese people feel about it, but I was very glad to have that assignment to write about the story and to give it to the public. You have to remember, so many years ago, there were not that much publicity for the public to know about, not only the Flying Tiger, but the war and so forth, because there was very limited press coverage at that time. But certainly, to me, as a young girl, were very interested in writing the story and give it to the public.
What was the most interesting thing to you about the Flying Tigers?
I was impressed and learned what the Flying Tiger at that time had done, and protecting some of the cities from the bombing of the Japanese, and also stopping the Japanese invading to some of the cities and bombing some of the cities in China.
How did a professional relationship with General Chennault turn to a personal relationship?
interesting question. Our General Chennault gave press conference almost every month, and I cover the story and subsequently get to know him a bit more and know more about the flying tiger. At that time, as you know, that the Chinese press were very limited capacity to do much publications. So I was given the assignment in particular to report the activities and the accomplishment of the flying tigers.
How did it turn into a relationship, a personal relationship?
Interesting questions. Well, that's life, you know. And because General Chennault and I got to know each other, I attend his press conference and write about the story and interview him quite frequently, and then going to the headquarters of the Flying Tigers and to write about the story. It was rather interesting, and for that I was very grateful and feel very satisfied to be able to cover that part of the activities during the wartime.
So you went to dinner at some point, or how did you become romantic?
Well, General Chennault, of course, was very, very busy, and I only got to interview him during the daytime, during office hour, and so occasionally he invited me for coffee or tea and talk about his experience in China and what his feeling about the Chinese and China. And he had this deep sympathy of China and the Chinese people. So subsequently, I got more and more interesting about what the Flying Tigers were doing in China, and was very glad to be able to write a story and report a story about the activities of the Flying Tigers.
What was he most proud of with the Flying Tigers? What was he most glad that they were able to accomplish?
The flying, of course, the Japanese, as you know, that they sent aircraft and bombing different China city. And so Flying Tiger, after they arrived to China, they tried and were successful in protecting the Chinese cities from the Japanese bombing. That was very, very important. And they were able to do that, and the Chinese people were very grateful for what they have done and they try to do. And in fact, even today, some of the older Chinese still remember what the Flying Tigers was trying to do to protect the cities in China from the Japanese bombing.
General Chennault was known as a tough man, kind of gruff in some ways. Was he like that in private as well?
No.
No.
He was a very brave person and rather romantic.
Oh. So how long were you covering the Flying Tigers before the end of the war?
For almost 4 years.
4 years.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your reaction to the atomic bombings that ended the war?
At that time, I guess I didn't think too much about it, but I was glad it happened, and I was glad they did it.
What was the general's reaction?
I guess about the same. I didn't get the opportunity to ask him.
So then after the war, you got married in 1947, is that right?
December 47, yeah.
Okay. And you stayed in China, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you and the general do then?
I continued to work as a reporter, cover many public events.
Okay.
And so it kept me busy on my work. And it was very interesting work. As you know, when the war ended and China's trying to rebuild and try to recover, so there was so much to be reported. And I was able to experience, to see what the Chinese government trying to do to rebuild some of the cities being bombed and so forth. It was a very difficult time, very interesting time, and not too many Chinese press able to report or to publicize the current events. So I was very glad to be part of the activities. And certainly at that time, the Chinese people all looking forward to know, to get the news about what's going on. And so they were hungry for the current events. And so any news we can provide them, they were glad to see it. So, and I was able to be part of that activities and to work for the Central News Agency in China to do the reporting about the current events.
Of course, just I think 4 years after the end of World War II came the Chinese Revolution. Talk about reporting on that and obviously the impact it had on the country.
Oh, what can I say? That part of the history, I would say it was a very sad history. The Chinese government, shall I say, that government, had two parts, the communist part and the national part. And I was working for Central News Agency, which belonged to the Chinese national government. And then also I realized the communist Chinese also have their own coverage. And so it tells different story. And how to tell the truth, how to present it correctly is not easy.
Did you see their coverage as actual coverage or propaganda?
Well, at that time we consider their coverage was propaganda. And we, in fact, in the office, we joke about it and said, look, this is our story, this is their story, now who's going to believe it? But both sides tried to do their best to do what they supposed to do. And of course, as you know, at that time already, the national Chinese government already realized they have another war to fight, which is fighting the Japanese, not Japanese, the communist propaganda. And certainly it was not easy, but both sides were trying their best to do the story. And I was with the Chinese government news agency, and certainly trying my best to do what I can to do the reporting of the current events.
Hold on.
Yeah, it's scratching a little bit.
It's scratching when you play with the microphone there.
That's good.
Sorry.
There you're good. You're good. You can keep going though.
Okay. So even at that time, things were difficult, and to be able to report our side, their side, and of course the Chinese Communist press have their coverage and have their news reporters to write their stories and hopefully to present it also to the Chinese people. So many years ago, we were already trying to do our best to make the presentation to the Chinese public. And it had not been easy because, as you know, many cities, many places already being covered by the communists. And Chinese communists certainly trying their best to destroy the coverage of the national press. So it was a very difficult time and very tragic.
So when the communist revolution succeeded, I'm guessing you lost your job.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Right. Well, that's part of it. And the Japanese was trying everything to make things difficult for the national Chinese government. And the national Chinese government trying their way to present the facts to the Chinese people against the communist press, Chinese communist press also writing their story, publicize and emphasize the effort for the communist side. But of course, they don't call themselves communists. They just said they are presenting a different story.
The People's Republic, right?
Yeah.
Did the Chinese people know about how many people were being killed by Mao Zedong?
No way. I mean, you have to remember, in many cities in China at that time, there was no press, very poor, and only in the city that was near the coast that they have the press, but many places have no press, and subsequently they have no way to present the facts to the Chinese people. And the Chinese people fighting for their own survival certainly did not realize what was going on. Well, I would say not realize. I think many of them did not realize what's going on. But no, some of them know. Some of them recognize there were already two sides of war fighting against each other. The national Chinese government, the press, and the national communist organization also have their press. So there was two sides fighting.
So then,
difficult time.
Then what did you do? What did you do? Where did you and the general go after that?
I was still a reporter. I was still doing my reporting for the Chinese government. I worked for the Chinese government press, new agency. I didn't meet General Chennault until I do the new coverage of the 14th Air Force and the Flying Tiger.
Right. I mean, after the Communist Revolution.
Oh, after the Communist Revolution. Mm-hmm. That was, again, so much happened. And the Chinese government tried to get General Chennault to help them to organize the Air Force and trying to make protection for the cities from the communists. And the communists were trying to take over some of the cities. So the war against two parties had begun, and national Chinese government and the communist so-called government against each other. Mm-hmm. And the people just try to survive. And the Japanese, of course, taking advantage of the tragic events in China and what's happened in China, they took advantage of that and try to bomb some Chinese cities and doing a lot of propaganda. And the Chinese people, of course, there was not that much news coverage. So the Chinese people were not able to really find out the facts or giving the opportunity to know about what's going on. So it was a very tragic time for the Chinese people. And because the war ended in China, but not exactly ended, because the war did not end. The Chinese national government fighting against the Japanese.
Right. When did you come to America?
I came to the United States in 1949. My father was a diplomat.
Okay.
Yeah, so my father was in the United States. So I was able to travel to San Francisco, New York, and learn about America.
When did you move here permanently?
I moved to the United States in 1952, 53, in the 50s.
Okay. And you later worked for Voice of America, correct?
Yes,
What did you do there?
I was doing reporting for Voice of America, which I have a weekly program. And it was interesting to be able to do that.
You also became involved in politics, correct?
Yes,
How did that happen?
long story. Well, at that time, of course, you know that the Republican and the Democrat campaign against each other was very active, and I was sent to make reporting for what's going on with the activities, and subsequently to get to know many of the candidates of the Republican and the Democrat, and to report of what they were trying to do, which was very, very interesting. And that's how I got to learn about U.S. politics.
And you had a couple of roles in the Nixon administration.
Yes.
What did you do for the Nixon administration?
Well, I was introduced to many of the Republican candidate and a Democrat candidate. And so the Nixon administrations sort of ran up to me and gave me the story of what they were doing, and hopefully that I will be able to present their story to the public, which was really, really interesting. And that's how I learned about U.S. politics, and it was very interesting to me.
Now, you did have one political controversy. What role did you play in communicating with the South Vietnamese government during the 1968 campaign? There's some controversy about that.
Yes, because of my reporting for the Central News Agency, which is a national Chinese news agency. And subsequently, I got to meet many of the candidates, and of course, including Nixon. And their campaign, was hot. And so we have to report of their activities and what's going on and who's supporting who. The Nixon administrations got hold of me and asked me to organize the Asian citizens for the campaign. And from there, I got to know many of the candidates and also to know many of the politicians, shall I say, involved in the campaign. As you know, in the 60s, 66, 67, 68, and move on, it was very important part of the U.S. history of campaigning. And Nixon was campaigning for his candidate, and I was able to interview him and also got to know many of the Republican and the Democrat candidates running for office at that time. I mean, looking back, you can fully understand why it was so interesting, because I think that part of history in the United States, the campaign was really very aggressively active, and I was able to interview many of the candidates and also doing some publicity for them.
Now, about a decade earlier, 1958, you were still a very young woman when General Chennault passed away. What was the impact of that on you?
Well, I try to separate my personal life and public life. And doing my job, I just have to do what I can, what I could to do the reporting. And it was not easy. Try to separate your personal life and your public life.
Difficult time.
Yes.
2 young children, correct?
Yes.
Madame Chennault, just 2 quick questions. Looking back, what are you most proud of with respect to your husband's legacy?
Well, I was always proud of General Chennault, what he had done and what he was trying to do, because he was really very against the communists. And after I got to know him, and after I married him, and follow him around for his activities, I realized how dedicated he was in fighting communism. And subsequently, he influenced me a great deal about his thinking and his activities and what he's trying to do to fight the communists. So we worked together after we were married, and which was not easy. And he tried to do his job and try to fight for what he believed, which I believe in him. And I was grateful to get to know him, to work with him, and to love him.
And how about specifically with the Flying Tigers? What's the best part of his legacy with the Flying Tigers?
Well, the Flying Tiger, of course, they came in to China to help Chinese to fight Chinese, and then later on fight the communists. The Flying Tiger were trying to do their best, but very little, and have to do so much. And General Chennault have always thought we have to fight the communism in order to give Chinese the freedom. And it was a very complicated time, and we were trying to work together to make a living, and certainly not too many people realized the real situation in China at that time. And the Chinese people in China at that time going through a very difficult time and only try to survive and then to learn what happened to some of the cities already being occupied by the communists. And at the same time, the Japanese were trying their best to publicize what's going on of China, that saying the Chinese national government not helping the people, and the communists were trying to fight for freedom. So for the Chinese people, after 8 long years of the war, and then again now faced with this difficult situation, it was very, very difficult for the Chinese people to separate reality and facts. And certainly it's not easy for people to know what to do and what road to follow. And I myself, being a reporter, a young reporter at that time, was able to have the opportunity to find the facts and do the reporting. And then also realize what the Japanese trying to do to separate the people from the government and trying to publicize their role of helping the Chinese. It was a very confusing time because, as you know, many, many years ago, the Chinese did not have much press, and in the cities there were not that much publications. And for instance, I myself work for the National Chinese Government News Agency, was able to do the reporting, but even then we will only do part of it because we were not able to cover everything.
Madame, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an honor to speak with you.
Thank you.